Welcome to the next instalment of my Strolling Through Bible History. And we pick up the story. We had talked about the United Kingdom becoming the divided kingdom when Rehoboam, Solomon's son, promised the people that he would make their life very hard and very difficult because he wanted more than his father had. And Jeroboam led a rebellion of 10 tribes and set up the northern kingdom, which was named Israel, and the southern kingdom was Judah. We saw that last time. And we'd reached the point where Athaliah, the one woman who ruled on the throne of the southern kingdom, has died, and her son, her grandson, Joash, who had been rescued by his auntie when Athaliah killed all the other babies, he has come to the throne at the age of 6 on the southern kingdom throne, the kingdom of Judah. In the north, in Israel, we have Jehu, who was the man anointed by God to exact judgment on the house of Omri. That's Ahab's family, and he killed off all the descendants of Omri and Ahab and became king in their place in the northern kingdom of Israel. None of the kings, let me remind you, in the northern kingdom were descended from David, but all the kings in the southern kingdom were, and that was because of the promise that there would always be a king on the throne of those people who was descended from David. So we're picking it up when Joash is on the throne in the southern kingdom and Jehu in the northern kingdom. Now this is all told in the books of the Kings and paralleled in the books of the Chronicles, 1 and 2 Chronicles. So you will follow this through, and you'll find that each chapter will say things like, in the 23rd year of King Joash, Jehu began to reign, or whatever. I'm not saying that's quoting, I'm just saying it always refers to the other kingdom so that you know which king is on the throne when the next king comes to power. So it's always toing and froing between the two, and you do need to be certain which kingdom we're talking about, where the story fits in Kings and in Chronicles. So it does that repeatedly at the, so somebody has died in one kingdom and then there's the next king in the other kingdom, and it can be very confusing. So keep your eye on the Israel is the northern kingdom, Judah is the southern kingdom. And don't get confused because in the early chapters of the Old Testament, the children of Israel are the whole company of the people, and Judah is a tribe, one of the descendants of one of the sons of Jacob, who became Israel. So when we get to this period, we're talking about 2 different territories ruled by different kings. So I hope that's clear. So into this story that is told from 1 Kings 12 through to 2 Kings 25. Into that story we have to fit the prophets, the minor and major prophets, mostly the minor, well, no, all of them, let's say. We have to fit the prophets into this. So we are talking about, we've reached about Joash and Jehu somewhere round about 838, 840 BC. I'm not going to use BCE because I don't agree with it. BC, and I'm not using before COVID either. I'm saying before Christ. BC. So, and of course the dates count down to 0. So we're about 838, 840 BC, and we will count down and the numbers go down. And into this period, roughly, we can put the prophet Joel, one of the minor prophets. Joel's prophecy does not actually contain any information to place it date-wise. It is a prophecy surrounding or about a locust swarm invasion that happened. Now these things happen fairly periodically in that kind of hot tropical country, and God used the locust storm, the swarm of locusts, as a means of teaching his people. And it's in Joel, of course, that we get the foretelling of the coming of the day of Pentecost, when everyone would be filled with the Holy Spirit. That's contained in the prophet Joel. And we can place Joel probably about this time, 830 to 800 BC. No certainty about when, but roughly in that period of time. And then we come through several kings. We come to Amaziah in the southern kingdom, and we've got Jehoahaz and Jehoash in the northern kingdom, and then Jeroboam II in the northern kingdom, and a couple of years after he comes to the throne, we get Uzziah in the southern kingdom. Uzziah is mentioned in Isaiah in chapter 6, in the year that King Uzziah died. Isaiah saw the Lord, and we believe his call to ministry came in the year that King Uzziah died. Uzziah, we have to be careful, because King Uzziah is given another name in Kings and Chronicles, almost interchangeably, and sometimes he's called Azariah, and sometimes he's called Uzziah. So they are the same person. It never gets easier, when you're dealing with names that are very similar. So Amaziah is succeeded by his son Azariah, who is also known as Uzziah. Let's call him Uzziah just for simplicity. Now, it is during the reign of Uzziah, right the way through to the reign of Hezekiah, and into the reign of Hezekiah's son Manasseh, that Isaiah prophesies. Isaiah prophesies and writes his prophecy over a period of about 50 years. And these great kings in the southern kingdom, he's in the southern kingdom, Isaiah, he's prophesying to the kings, he's involved with the kings, and he begins in the reign of Uzziah, and we think he was executed, beheaded possibly, by Manasseh during his reign. Manasseh is dated around 697 BC. But also we have some contemporaries to Isaiah, and these are Hosea. Now, Isaiah prophesied to the southern kingdom. Hosea prophesied to the northern kingdom during the reign of Jeroboam II, which is at the beginning of the life or the ministry of Isaiah. He's a contemporary of Isaiah, and so he and Isaiah are prophesying about similar things, about the corruption, about the materialistic attitude, about the attitude that they had, that if they did their sacrificing properly, it didn't matter what they did with the rest of their lives. And God takes them to task. Hosea, of course, is the great prophet that is instructed by God to marry a prostitute, and he has children that he's not sure whether they're his children or not. And a lot of Hosea's prophecy is likening the relationship that he has with his wayward wife to the relationship that God has with his wayward people. It's a prophecy about love, and about God's love, and about the pain that God feels, which Hosea experiences himself in his own personal life, and God uses it as a prophetic word to the nation. Peter picks it up, the names of the children in one, I think it's 1 or 2 Peter. So Hosea lives in the northern kingdom, and he prophesies probably during most of the reign of Jeremiah II, about the 8th century BC. But he's contemporary with Isaiah. Amos is also contemporary with Isaiah. Amos was a shepherd. He's an interesting character because he was a tender of sycamore trees, or keeper of sycamore trees. He was a shepherd. He wasn't a prophet. He didn't aspire to any greatness, but God called him. He lived in Tekoa in the southern kingdom, but God sent him to the northern kingdom to prophesy to the northern kingdom. That's Amos, one of my favourites. I like Amos a lot. Excuse me, I'm very thirsty this afternoon, don't know why. Anyway, so Amos is also contemporary with Hosea, but of course Hosea is prophesying in the north, and Amos is sent to the north with a very similar message. Very similar message. You've become too materialistic. You've forgotten who God is. You think that by just making the right sacrifices and doing and saying the right thing that everything's okay, but it's actually not. And so Amos is doing that. And then there's Micah. Micah is contemporary with all of these, probably slightly later than the other two. Certainly Hosea and Isaiah he's contemporary with. He may not have been quite contemporary with Amos, but we're not sure. But Micah spoke to both the north and the south with the same message. And it was pretty much ignored by both nations, the north and the south. And they were having all sorts of troubles with the enemies of the Syrians in the north. Were constantly attacking them. And then as we get into Uzziah and Jeremiah and these times of Isaiah and Hosea and Amos, we have the beginnings of the rise in power of the Assyrian Empire, which really the northern kingdom suffered the most to begin with, but the southern kingdom was also invaded at different times. And the Assyrians were a very powerful nation. And of course, I haven't spoken about Jonah. Jonah, we think, is probably before 750 BC. Jonah was sent to prophesy to the Assyrians in Nineveh. He is contemporary with these ones, probably with Amos, and certainly, well, probably just before Isaiah. We're not sure exactly. But the Assyrians had risen. They were becoming very powerful. They were a very cruel, oppressive, invading force. They had a policy which was quite unlike the Romans and the Greeks when they come later on, and even different to the Babylonians. But what they did was they deliberately mixed the races of any conquered peoples so that they couldn't rise against Assyria. They were very cruel. They were, capital was Nineveh, and some great names, Tiglath-Pileser and Shalmaneser, Sargon and Sennacherib are the great Assyrian leaders, kings, and they come against the northern kingdom progressively over time, and the warnings are given by these prophets to the people to repent, or disaster is going to fall. And we have some very short reigns in the northern kingdom. There's a guy called Shalom who only was king for a month, and then we have Menahem, Pekah and Hoshea in the northern kingdom. And in 721 BC, the northern kingdom falls to the Assyrian Empire and never is reformed. It disappears off the map. It's talked of as the lost tribes of Israel. The whole northern kingdom was overrun by the Assyrians, and they took away into captivity many of the people from the northern kingdom, and then they sent into the northern kingdom peoples from other parts of their conquered empire, and it became a mixed race place. And then, because there was a lot of wild animal destruction in the northern kingdom, the Assyrians actually sent back some of the priestly group, to tell the people of the land how to worship the god of the land, because they believed very much that the gods were linked to a land area, and if you wanted that land to prosper, you had to worship the god of that land. And they felt that somehow somebody must be displeasing the god of the land for so much disaster to befall them. So they sent people to teach them how to live and how to worship the gods. That is where the Samaritans come from. In the New Testament, we meet the Samaritans several times. The Samaritans and the Jews had a mutual hatred. The Jews did not associate with the Samaritans because they were not pure descendants of the Jewish tribes. They had some Jewishness in them, and they knew something about God and how to worship God. And we know that from the meeting with the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4. I think it's John chapter 4. But they didn't mix. It was because they were a mixed race. They'd been taught how to worship the God of Israel, of the northern kingdom, but they were not pure Jews. They were mixed race, and they'd mixed some other traditions in, and so they didn't worship God the right way either. And the Jews did not associate with them. But that's where the Samaritans come from. They come from the settlement of the area around the city of Samaria by the Assyrians after their conquest of the northern kingdom in 721 BC. And when that happens, Hezekiah is on the throne in the south, with Isaiah at his side, advising him and helping him. We have the Assyrians coming against Jerusalem and saying, we've taken the northern kingdom, what makes you think Jerusalem is going to survive? And we have all that wonderful prophecy of Isaiah to Hezekiah that God is not going to destroy his kingdom. He's going to preserve Jerusalem, and to trust in God. And Hezekiah takes a letter into the presence of God and puts it in front of him, and there's these Assyrians round the walls, and it's a great act of faith, resisting them, not listening to them, and standing firm. And the Assyrians go home, and Jerusalem is not destroyed by the Assyrians. Hezekiah continues as king, and we just finished the story of Hezekiah. Hezekiah is a very godly king, and Isaiah is his advisor and prophet. And there comes a time when Hezekiah is ill, and Isaiah, he calls for Isaiah, and Isaiah tells him to put his affairs in order because he's going to die. And he pleads with God for 15 more years, and for more life, and God gives him 15 more years. And it's during those 15 years that his son Manasseh is born, and Manasseh is described as the king who shed more blood in Jerusalem than any other king before him. He was a very wicked king, but Chronicles tells us that he repented before the end of his life, and God forgave him. So Manasseh is Hezekiah's son, and it's during the reign of Manasseh that Isaiah dies. So I think that's a good place to stop this episode. I hope you followed all of that, and I hope you'll be blessed as you explore those chapters in 1 and 2 Kings and in 1 and 2 Chronicles. See you next time.